Captain Emily Carter wasn't supposed to be the one making the final call that night. She was solid, steady hands, calm voice, the kind of officer people listened to without realizing they were listening. But she was still second in command. The mission belonged to Colonel James Walker, a seasoned commander with a reputation that felt carved into stone. He brought people home. In the briefing room, Walker didn't waste words. A map glowed on the screen, mountains like jagged teeth, valleys like open wounds. An enemy unit is operating from a base hidden above the ridge, Walker said. They intercepted a U.S.-protected humanitarian convoy 2 days ago. Aid workers, medical staff, local families traveling with them. Emily's eyes stayed on the red circle drawn around a remote pass. They've gone silent, Walker continued. No radio, no GPS pings, no movement. That's not an accident. That's a message. A few men shifted in their seats. Everyone understood what silence meant in hostile territory. Emily didn't speak. She watched the room the way she always did, reading faces, measuring breathing, catching the tiny cracks where fear tried to grow. Not because fear was weakness. Fear was human. But fear left unattended could kill. Walker's gaze landed on her for half a second longer than anyone else's. "Carter," he said, "you're with me." "Yes, sir." He nodded once. That was his way of saying, "I trust you." They lifted off just before midnight, rotors slicing the cold air. The aircraft shook as it climbed, the mountain winds pushing back like hands that didn't want them there. Emily sat across from Walker, helmet on, chin strapped tight, hands resting on her gear. She could feel the hum of the engine through her bones. Walker leaned slightly closer so only she could hear. "We get the civilians out," he said, voice low, "and we don't chase glory." Emily met his eyes. Understood. Walker exhaled, like he'd been carrying more than equipment. "Mountains do something to men," he added. "They make them feel invisible, untouchable. They forget that every decision echoes." Emily looked past him at the darkness outside the open bay. Endless black. No streetlights, no distant cars, just snow and stone and the quiet threat of elevation. "I won't forget," she said. Walker nodded again. Good. They were dropped miles from the target, where the air felt thin even through a mask, and the cold bit straight through layers. Snow crunched under boots, then stopped crunching when they hit wind-packed ice. The climb began immediately, steep, punishing, relentless. Emily led her team in a staggered formation. Walker stayed near the center, where he could see everyone. Their headlamps were off. They moved by feel and memory and the faint gray glow of starlight reflecting on snow. Time slowed the way it always did on missions like this. 1 minute could stretch into an hour. Every sound became loud. Every breath had weight. After the first ridge, they paused beneath a rock shelf to scan the valley. Below them, a ruined outpost, burned vehicles, broken gates, shattered crates, signs of a struggle, signs of people taken quickly. Emily's stomach tightened. Walker studied the scene through night optics, his jaw flexed once. "Carter," he whispered. "You see that?" Emily followed his sightline. Boot prints, drag marks, and faint tracks leading toward the higher pass, toward the mountains that swallowed everything. "Yes, sir." Walker lowered the optics and said the words Emily would remember for the rest of her life. "Then we're going up." They moved again, higher, colder, the kind of cold that didn't just sting, it erased. It stole sensation from fingers, stole warmth from thought, stole time from people who underestimated it. As they climbed, Emily's mind drifted to a memory she hated. Years ago, at a training range, someone had laughed under their breath when she'd stepped into leadership rotation. It wasn't even loud enough to call out, just loud enough for her to hear. She won't last. Emily had never argued. She had outlasted them instead. Tonight wasn't about proving anything. Tonight was about lives. And the mountain didn't care who doubted her. Near 0310, the team reached a narrow spine of rock overlooking a cluster of structures tucked into a hidden pocket of the range. Dim lights flickered behind tarps. Guards moved along a perimeter. Emily crouched beside Walker as he assessed the compound. "That's the holding site," he murmured. "Could be a secondary location. The main base is probably higher." Emily heard the word probably and felt a cold pressure behind her ribs. Probabilities killed people, but sometimes probabilities were all you had. Walker raised his hand, 2 fingers forward, 1 down. Positions shifted. They were about to descend when the night split open. A sharp crack, clean, precise. Walker's body jerked as if someone had yanked him backward. He didn't fall dramatically, he just folded. Emily's brain refused to accept it at first. The commander who always brought people home, suddenly on the ground, blood spreading into snow that instantly turned dark. Emily was beside him before anyone finished inhaling. "Sir," she whispered, pressing her hands against his chest. Walker's eyes were open, not panicked, not confused, just painfully aware. A sniper shot. 1 hit. Perfect. Emily's hands shook once, then steadied. She leaned in close, voice trembling at the edges. "Stay with me, please." Walker's lips moved. Words came out like breath fighting its way through stone. "Carter." "Yes, sir." His gaze locked onto hers, and in that stare Emily felt the weight of everything he'd carried, every mission, every loss he'd swallowed, every soldier he'd dragged home in silence. "You have the command," he said. Emily's throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. "Finish it," Walker added, softer. "Don't leave them." Emily blinked fast, like she could stop the moment from happening if she didn't let her eyes water. "I won't," she whispered. Walker exhaled once, slow, final. And then the mountain took him. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Not the team, not the wind, not Emily's hands still pressed to his chest like she could push life back into him. Then the radio crackled. Enemy movement, the threat closing in. Reality returned like a slap. Emily stood. Her voice cut through the freezing darkness, clear and unbroken. "Command is mine," she said into comms. "We are completing the mission." A pause, then, "Copy." Emily looked down at Walker, at the blood staining the snow, and forced her grief into a place she would deal with later, if later ever came. "We don't leave him," someone said quietly. Emily's jaw tightened. "Not now, not yet. We bring him home, after they're safe." She turned toward the compound. "Move." They descended in controlled silence, but the enemy had sensed something. Guards tightened the perimeter. Flashlights swept the snow. Emily adjusted instantly. She split the team. 2 flank, 1 overwatch, 1 breach unit with her. Every order she gave had Walker's voice inside it, like a compass she couldn't see. They hit the perimeter fast, quiet takedowns, suppressed shots, bodies lowered into shadows. Emily's pulse hammered, but her mind was steady. She could feel leadership settling onto her shoulders like armor. They reached a storage building that wasn't on the map. Inside, metal cages. Emily's breath caught. Doctors, aid workers, a few local men and women. One teen boy clinging to his mother's arm, eyes wide with shock. Faces bruised, hands tied, some too weak to stand. A woman in a dusty medical jacket looked up at Emily like she'd seen a ghost. You're real," the woman whispered. Emily didn't waste time. She cut restraints, signaled med support, guided them out in groups. "Stay low," she told them. "Follow the light on my shoulder. Do not stop. Do not run unless I tell you." One of the aid workers stared past her, noticing the way Emily's hand trembled as she lifted a wounded man. "Are we going to make it?" he asked. Emily met his eyes. "Yes," she said, and made it sound like a promise she could physically enforce. A burst of rounds tore into the wall near her head. Snow exploded. She fired back, directing her team, creating a path. One civilian stumbled. Emily grabbed his collar and dragged him into cover without thinking. The team moved, inch by inch, uphill toward the extraction point. And then Emily saw it. Far above them, faint silhouettes moving around a higher structure carved into the rock. The real base. If they left it intact, this wouldn't end tonight. The enemy would scatter, regroup, strike another convoy, take more people, kill more people. Emily looked at the civilians, living proof of what happened when you let evil stay hidden. Her radio crackled. "Extraction window is tight." Emily's voice stayed steady. "Civilians first, all civilians out, then we finish the base." A pause on comms. Someone hesitated. Emily understood why. She repeated, harder, "That's an order." "Yes, ma'am." Once the last civilians reached the path toward the landing zone, Emily turned her gaze upward again. The mountain base sat higher, protected by elevation and arrogance. Walker had warned her, mountains made men feel untouchable. Emily tightened her grip on her weapon. "Not tonight," she whispered. She took a smaller unit, only those who could move fast, and began climbing. Every step burned. The air felt like shards in her lungs. The wind screamed. Snow blinded them. But Emily kept going. Halfway up, enemy fire found them again. A round grazed Emily's shoulder, hot pain slicing through numb cold. She didn't stop. She didn't even swear. She pressed forward until they reached a rocky ledge overlooking the base. Emily's breathing came out harsh. She pulled explosives from her pack, hands bloodied and shaking, not from fear, but from cold and strain. A soldier beside her murmured, "Ma'am, we could just leave." Emily stared at the base. And then she heard Walker's voice in her head, not imagined, remembered. "Every decision echoes." Emily swallowed hard. "If we leave," she said, "they take someone else tomorrow." She crawled forward, placed charges along the support points she'd identified. Each movement felt slow, like the mountain was fighting her. When the last charge clicked into place, Emily gave the signal. They pulled back behind cover. Emily hit the detonator. The explosion lit the mountains like sudden daylight. Fire tore through the base. Stone collapsed. The shock wave rolled across the snow like thunder. The enemy's untouchable fortress crumbled into nothing but flame and falling rock. For one heartbeat, Emily just stared. Then she exhaled, shaking, silent. "Base destroyed," she said into comms. "We're moving to extraction." They loaded Walker last. Emily climbed in after him and sat beside the covered form. Her helmet rested on the floor. Her wounded shoulder throbbed. Her hands were still stained. As the helicopter lifted, the mountain fell away beneath them, smoke rising from the destroyed base like a final exhale. Emily stared at the sunrise and finally let one tear escape. Just one. It slid down her cheek and disappeared into the cold. She didn't wipe it away. Back home, there were no headlines, no cameras, just a hanger, a quiet ceremony, and a folded flag carried with a care that felt like sacred pain. Emily stood at attention in her dress uniform. Her wound was wrapped beneath fabric. Her face was composed. But inside, something was breaking in slow motion. Walker's family stood waiting, eyes red, shoulders shaking, trying to be strong because that's what families of soldiers learn to do. Emily stepped forward when the moment came. The flag was placed into waiting hands. Emily's voice was steady until the last sentence. "He didn't hesitate," she said. "He gave me the command so I could finish the mission, so they could live." Her throat tightened. "He saved them," she added, softer. "All of them." The family nodded, grief too big for words. Emily saluted, and when she lowered her hand, she knew her life had changed. Not because she'd destroyed an enemy base, not because she'd led a rescue under fire, but because command wasn't a title. Command was a weight you carried long after the mission ended. And she would carry Colonel James Walker, his trust, his final order, his sacrifice, into every decision for the rest of her career. Because some heroes don't come home alive, but they come home honored. And some leaders aren't born in training rooms. They're forged at 310 in the freezing mountains, kneeling beside a fallen commander, standing up anyway, and saying, "Command is mine," and meaning it.